This week's episode is brought to you by the legends over at Dog and Gun Coffee, and you guys can get $10 off your next order when you use the code Bowhunter, all in caps locks. That's Bowhunter, and that will get you $10 off of your next order of freaking delicious coffee made for adventure. If you guys love coffee and you're a bit of a coffee snob, you want coffee that tastes freaking delicious, then you need to head over to Dog and Gun's website and get yourself an order. Because you'll have coffee on the run, no matter where you are. As long as you've got water, especially if you've got hot water, you'll have coffee wherever the heck you are. So I would really recommend heading across to Dog and Gun Coffee and using that code Bowhunter.
Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands, searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
Welcome back, team. I have an absolute ripper of an episode today. I am joined by the one and only Kev Schilf. Kev was the second ever podcast interview that I had on, and we talked all about red deer, and this time he's come back to give us the real insights into the rut, but into also finding the biggest, baddest mother frigger out in the woods, out in the bush. To be honest, Kev just gave so many great insights in this podcast that is going to completely transition so many people's rut this year. If you're like me, you're absolutely frothing over the rut already. And this episode, believe me, is going to give you so much insight. I'm going to listen to it like 10 more times, I believe, before the rut, because as I was listening, I was just like, oh my God, of course. And he makes it all make so much sense. He shares some things he's never shared before, apart from with people who are in his camp. And I think realistically, this is a game changer for those who get to go out and hunt the red deer here in Australia. I mean, really hunt red deer wherever you are hunting them in the world. So I'm really excited to share this one with you guys. I know Kevy was excited to share it as well. So make sure you reach out to him, thank him, especially when you get those big boys on the ground. Send me and Kev both a message as soon as you get those big boys down. I want to see that stuff, and I know Kev would love to as well. So make sure you're following along, but I'm going to shut up so you guys can enjoy the episode. Alrighty, bow hunters, welcome back. I'm excited. It was the 15th of March, 2019, that we released the second episode of the podcast, which was with Mr. Kev Schilf, and you are right back here with me, Kevy. We're going to talk about some red deer.
We certainly are, and I think they're coming on strong this year, mate.
Indeed. We send each other little love messages quite often. It's just a picture of a beautiful red stag or a video of a red stag over Instagram, and I'll tell you what, it gets me a little bit more excited every time. And this year in particular, I think it just happens every year, the deeper you get into bow hunting in general. But every year when the rut's coming closer and closer, about October last year, I started getting really excited for it when it was about 6 months out. And now that we're, 3 months out, I'm starting to get even more amped. I'm very excited for what's happening this year.
Yeah, I think we're even closer than that, mate. So I'd say 15th to 20th of March, they'll be starting to make some noise. So, and that's not that far away. We're looking 6 weeks.
Far out. That is crazy when you put it in perspective.
Yeah.
So 30th. What is it today?
31st.
31st of January. So yeah, it's quickly approaching. I think last time that we talked, like I said, I did re-listen to it back then, but I haven't listened to it again recently. I think we gave a general overall understanding on red deer. We did talk a little bit about the rut, but I think what would be really cool as an insight to the rut happening within the next 6 weeks is actually giving a real oversight as to what the rut is, what the process of the rut is like. Is there a difference between South Australia to Queensland? Is there a difference in moon cycles? Is there a difference in the coldness and all this stuff that you hear from different avenues and different people within the bow hunting realm? Can we delve deep into what the actual rut process is and how it works for red deer in particular?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go for it.
I think there's a lot of information, and all I can do is share my experience
Definitely.
and the knowledge that I've picked up in the last, without giving away how old I am, 30 to 35 years.
Yeah.
But I'll certainly share what I have banked in my brain over that time if alcohol hasn't destroyed it. But happy to give you what I have learnt in my time in the paddock and what I've learnt from other people as well.
Oh, yeah, excellent. So in regards to the rut, you're saying it starts quite often around the middle of March, around 15th of March, which I just found out is your birthday as well.
Yes. Look, it does. It'll start there, or roughly around there. So start of March to the middle of March, the stags will leave their bachelor herds, right? Because they've been growing their antlers and their testosterone has been slowly building. They get to a point where the length of days determines when they start rubbing.
Okay. What do you mean by the length of days, like from sunrise to sunset?
Sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, okay.
That length of daylight.
Okay.
And that also determines, everything that I've experienced and read and watched also determines when they start roaring.
So it's more of like a circadian rhythm style.
Yep.
More than anything else.
Yep.
So humans have the exact same thing. If you think about sunlight, moonlight, essentially something that humans should do is wake up in the morning and go and get indirect sunlight without sunnies or anything like that on, because it sets our circadian rhythm, which is essentially the day and night time of your natural habitat. So it means that when the sun then goes down over nighttime, you naturally get tired. The problem is that with all of the fake lights that we have within our housing, it can mess up your circadian rhythm, which is why we get the difference with night owls and morning larks and whatever else that it is. But very interesting that that's the same way that it works. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of theories out there about moon phases and temperature and all the rest of it.
Yep.
But it all comes down to length of daylight hours in the day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It puts it pretty straight, doesn't it?
Yeah. But what can alter the beginning of the rut is in different areas where it gets cooler earlier. It can reflect or mimic a shorter daylight hours time of like the heavy fog and all that sort of stuff of a morning where they don't actually get to see that sun as quickly as normal. There's lots of different theories around it, but it actually comes back to the length of daylight hours.
So potentially even the extreme weather differences that we've been having recently could have a big play on that to some extent.
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah, wow, it's super interesting. And so I've been out around the 18th to 20th of March, I believe, and heard one roar from one young boy only.
Yep.
That's related to testosterone, the amount of testosterone that he has. Like, what creates them to start roaring?
Again, it's the length of days,
Just the length of day.
Believe it or not, the length of daylight hours. So they will move out of their velvet growing grounds and their bachelor herds start to middle of March. When they start moving out of those out of their bachelor mobs, and they start moving towards what we call their rutting stand or their patch, they will roar along the way. Okay. And you'll very often hear landowners, farmers tell you, hey, wherever you got access, hey, get your ass up here. They're starting to roar.
Yeah.
Or they're starting to rut. That's them on their journey. So
because they're usually leaving a location to go to a new location, right? It's essentially moving off to make sure they're not ancestral.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't rut where they grow. The theory is that they grow their velvet mainly where they were born, and then they rut elsewhere.
Okay. And do you know like how far they'll travel for that?
Well, there's been a few studies done, and they will travel up to 20 kilometres a night to do that, and they will. And I've experienced this. They will rut in the same spot every year.
Every year.
That's their stand. That's their patch. That's where they're happy. That's where they want to get it down.
I've definitely witnessed that because I've seen the same stag three years in a row and just watched him grow.
Yeah.
He's like sambar looking almost in the darkness of his colour.
Yeah.
And his antlers are actually very vertical.
Yep.
which is very interesting
Narrow
compared
head.
compared to being quite well rounded, which a lot of them are on the block.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, that's very, very interesting. So up to 20 kilometers a night, but then that could be over multiple nights, right? Like how long do they take to migrate?
Well, you wouldn't imagine that they would go too far.
Because they have to journey back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's a long way from their home ground. I don't actually know how far they will go, but they will travel and travel a lot. And I think I said it was on another podcast that I heard of red deer in mid-March just walking along the ridgetop, and they're all roaring as they go. The whole lot of them. There would have been up to 20 animals in that mob.
Wow.
And they're just heading out of their velvet growing area.
Yep.
They're all young. There was nothing special in amongst them, but they're coming out of a significant bachelor mob and starting their march. And they walk and roar, and that roar starts off, nature tells them, hey, your testosterone's at a certain level. These are the length of the days. The roar does their roar does two jobs for them, right? So as they're walking towards their stand, they're roaring and they're loud.
Yes.
You know they're loud. I know they're loud. You get one at 10 yards from you, and then they unleash. They're loud.
Definitely.
They sound off, and hinds hear that, right? And that brings the girls into cycle.
So it's the actual sounding that...
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't
That
that
helps
fascinating?
bring them into cycle.
Yeah.
So as they're moving and they get to their usual rutting stand, or bench or shelf or whatever they're doing, they're sounding off, and that sound of them constantly roaring brings the girls into estrus, brings the girls into estrus.
Yeah.
And then the other job that the roar does is tells other guys the other stags,
To keep
hey,
moving on.
Stay away.
Yeah.
These are my girls.
So they're moving out of velvet stage. Is it only in that first 2 weeks of March that they're actually rubbing the velvet off of their antlers?
No, they'd be starting to do that
Do that
now.
already? I thought so.
Yeah. Around the end of January, they start to do that. The really big fellas, and again, they will actually peel off the velvet. It'll just start peeling before they'll start rubbing sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's all got to do with the length of days.
Yeah, wow.
I've been reading a lot just to try and understand it, because a lot of guys ask me, why do they start roaring, and what triggers them? And I always had a theory until about 5-6 years ago that it was moon phases, but it's not.
Yeah, wow.
Everything.
I think it's just the common theme that you hear, right? Like,
Yeah.
And it somewhat seems to line up, but it's never quite right.
It coincides. It's coincidence.
Well, exactly right with the length of day. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's so fascinating. So once they move off, when do they actually start fighting each other? Because you're saying that they'll move off together. You'll see them walking along a ridge, for instance. But when do they actually start? When do they get enough of a testosterone hit to say, like, oh, hold up?
I think they're already doing that at that stage, because they're starting to get intolerant of each other with their testosterone levels. And nature telling them, hey, look, it's time to mate. And they get that hypertrophy, their neck fills out for fighting, and the amount of testosterone, we all know what testosterone does to us, right? So they just beef up and ready to fight, and they're sparring all that time as well, which helps build that muscle. It just doesn't build by itself.
No, definitely.
And then they're rubbing trees as well. It's all in readiness to beat the shit out of each other for the right to mate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And it's very interesting seeing a stag out of pretty much a stag in any time of the year, apart from the rut and how thin its neck gets.
Yeah, they look like a hind on steroids, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Compared to one in the rut where they're so chunky.
Yeah.
It's like they just grow a load of excess skin to be able to fit it in there.
Yeah. Well, that testosterone goes towards that thickening of the skin as well to protect them during the fights. So out of season, a stag's skin on his neck is like 5 mil thick. But during the season, it's like an inch thick. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like a fighting pad for the boars, for instance.
Yeah, but it comes and goes.
Yeah, super interesting. So once they're in their location, is there anything to do with older, younger, boys that we should pay attention to? For instance, do younger ones come into season earlier or later? Is there anything around that? Do you know?
Right. So everything I've experienced is that the bigger, older boys, they'll start earlier, right?
Yeah.
And they will roar more significantly earlier on and more often earlier on. And that's them getting their piece of their chunk of property that they want,
Claiming
and they
it
will
straight
defend.
away.
And they will very quickly get their harem. So the bigger and older the stag, and a lot of blokes will say you can't judge a stag by its roar, and I'll attest to that. I've some of the biggest, well, a couple of the biggest stags I've seen in the Queensland bush had the most horrible roar, and they sounded really shit. But the hinds are attracted to a deeper, more robust roar, and that's the muscles in their neck actually go deeper and deeper as their years, as they get older.
So their voice gets deeper.
Their voice gets deeper, and they get more dominant.
Yeah, so it's more maturity just through the sound.
Yep, and the girls want the most dominant male. So a lot of guys will say, "Oh, don't go for the deepest roar." There is merit in it, but we aren't hinds. There's a certain tone that those hinds know what they're looking for.
Yeah,
we don't know what that is.
No, exactly.
But if they're roaring really deeply and really aggressively and less often, that's the bloke I'd be looking for. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the stag that I took last year, as you just told me, was actually only 3.5-year-old, which
Beautiful
is
stag, mate.
Beautiful stag, amazing. Yeah. I really thought he was probably a little bit older than that, but you're saying essentially it's the year after his forky year, so they go spike.
2 years after his spike,
2 years after his spike, so they go spike, fork to that.
Yeah, they can go from a spike, like they'll have forks on top as a spike.
Oh, okay.
The way you tell the difference between a spike and his first head is he will have a coronet. When they're a spike, they don't have a coronet.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it just grows off their pedicle.
Yeah, wow.
There you go.
That's super fascinating. So he was taken late April, like 20, I think it was like 26, maybe something around that.
Yeah.
The hills were very, very quiet, and then he gave out one little roar, a really small little roar.
Yeah.
That was about all he gave, and we were just in the right position to hear him, see him, and go and get him.
Yep.
We didn't do any calls. We didn't do any hind calls, any stag calls, just because it didn't seem like it was the right time to be doing it. But he also seemed like he's a very small boy compared to what the potential is on the block that I go to.
Yep.
So is there something around, because the big boys have got their space, they've claimed their harem, as you were saying before, that the little boys hang off until later on to be able to get in and get their pick?
So your littler boys or your less dominant males, they're what we call satellite stags.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And they are opportunistic breeders, right? And hinds are very well aware that they're out there.
Okay.
A hind will slip out from their harem with a big dominant male and do the deed and then come back in. And that's why these guys hang around. That's for their opportunity.
Yeah, okay.
Now, a stag, he's sexually mature at 3.5. So your stag up there, he would have been able to mate.
Okay.
Even though he hasn't got the headgear or the body sizes yet to defend a harem of girls, he's still sexually mature.
Yes,
He would have the secondary sexual characteristics to be able to do that.
So that only comes on at 3.5 years, roughly.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by and large, that beautiful stag has got all of the genetics to pass on great traits in a bush stag. Like, he's outstanding for his age. He's great. But he would have been on the outskirts of a more dominant male, perhaps, depending on how many animals are in the area. Look, it doesn't matter what time.
Okay. If the girls are in estrus, it will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as the boys leave as we were talking about before, they leave their bachelor mob or their velvet growing grounds.
Yeah.
and they take their journey to where they want to rut, right? They roar along the way. Girls come into estrus, and as soon as one comes into estrus, it's like a chain reaction. They all start coming into estrus, right? Now, if any particular girl does not get joined by a male in their first cycle, guess what? They drop another egg 18 to 20 days later.
Yeah, okay, so it can really extend the cycle.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'll hear a lot of guys that haven't had that much experience say, oh, there was 2 ruts this year.
Yeah.
It wasn't 2 ruts.
Just didn't get serviced.
So there was a heap of girls that came in season that first round, and then some of them were missed. And then there's another. Then there's more that they came into season or they cycled 18 to 20 days later, which is 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks later. If they don't get mated or joined, then guess what?
Happens again.
They do it again.
Is it so you're saying joined, is that meaning they don't fall pregnant within
That's right.
the actual attempt?
They don't conceive,
Yeah, wow, okay. So really, a rut could potentially take up to almost 8 weeks, 6 weeks, really.
Usually it's around 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But it can take up to 12 weeks. I've listened to a stag roaring his ass off on a hilltop in the middle of May because he had a girl who was in estrus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just him and the girl.
Yeah, okay.
And he was putting his nose over her rear end and curling his top lip and exposing that Jacob gland that's under the top lip.
What does that do?
That tells them that they're ready to mate.
So it's essentially like it's catching pheromones or something?
Yes, exactly right. And then when they turn it up, if you look under the next stag that you get your hands on, it's a diamond shape under there and it's got a hole in it.
Yeah.
And that's how they tell when they're ready to mate.
Before I go too far and I forget about it, the ivory.
Yes.
Is not something that I'd ever been told about until I took my stag and someone said to me, I can't remember who it was, but like, did you get the ivory? I said, I didn't know what they were. I've put them down on, I know exactly where they are at the farm. I still haven't collected them. I keep forgetting every time I'm there. What is that? Essentially, it is a form of ivory rather than a tooth, right?
It is. And I remember somebody telling me years ago that, like a deer is like a mixture of different animals, like a walrus because of
the tusks,
which
are ivory. Yeah.
The ivory, the downward tusks.
Yeah.
And then like a porcupine because their hair is actually hollow, like a quill. Like a goat because they browse on everything. They don't
eat whatever they want.
But the ivory's a thing. I used to have a Milo. I used to be a murderous bastard, but I had a Milo tin full of them.
Wow.
But it's something that I keep from them.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty special as well.
Yeah.
But there's 2 on either side.
Essentially, it's like the position of what our canines would be, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty cool.
So I actually need to pick them up and do something with them.
Yeah.
I think the person who reached out to me said that that they do just some sort of jewelry or something with them. Like they make
a lot of people
charm.
make earrings out of them or necklace charms or
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Super interesting. The wild species red deer are.
Yeah, well, you look at them too. If you look at them really closely, that ivory, they get smaller and smaller as the deer gets older.
Yeah.
Right? You look at them, there's got rings in them like a tree, like growth rings in a tree. So they're pretty cool.
Yeah, wow. That is super interesting. Nature in general is just so cool, but then to delve into this real specifics like we are it's fascinating. I think this is the side to bow hunting that a lot of people don't realize there is, right? The fascination with the animals and the deep understanding that we get to grow and the relationships we build with these animals is so amazing. I think for me to know exactly about that straight head, as you said, the dark sambar like deer that's on my block every single year. He's actually the one that I want to try target this year.
Yeah.
So, or within saying that, we'll see.
Yeah. Plans change real quick during a rut.
Exactly. Yeah. And depending on what you say on this podcast, it might change very drastically. So, is there anything else that we need to unpack regarding the actual rut and to understand it better, I guess? Like realistically, we know that it can start roughly around the middle of May, can go for up to...
Starts around the middle of March.
Sorry, middle of March. I was
Yeah.
misspeak. Middle of March can go up until middle of May, maybe even longer, depending on if they don't
it depends
cycle.
on the season and the cycles and how the boys go joining the girls and
Yep.
how far stretched out that gets. It's usually 4 weeks. Like a lot of guys will say, "Oh, yeah, the rut's over in the middle of April," which I've absolutely experienced. But I've also seen it go to the end of April, and I've also seen it finish in the first week of April.
Yeah.
And that comes down to a lot of heat. We've experienced up until last year, we've had really shitty seasons. Very dry, very hot.
Yeah.
Last year was pretty cool. This year's going to be better again, I think.
No, agree.
Even though we're experiencing some heat now, and the heat's late, I think there's going to be a very significant cold snap come pretty early on. Yeah. Just for interest's sake, for everybody that's listening, I'm taking the last week of March and the first week of April off, and nobody's catching up with me other than my hunting crew. So that's
the time you're unavailable.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But every area is different. That's me in the Brisbane Valley. So.
Exactly, and I think that's been quite specific for what I've seen as well. Why do we see boys be very, very vocal and then not be vocal during that time period?
Again, heat plays a factor in it. Don't know about you. I don't like shagging when it's hot. I really don't. And these guys put a lot of work into it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Not the actual act, but getting their girls and keeping their girls to themselves. The other thing is too that that coolness and the length of days, it all marries up. The shorter the days get as we go into winter, the cooler it gets, right, normally. Sometimes we get an unusual heat, a drive of heat, hot days early in April, and that'll shut them down. Things are still happening, but it shuts things down. And then all of a sudden you'll get a cold snap, and then people will be calling me saying, "Hey, the deer have just started roaring." Well, they haven't started roaring. They've just
they're starting to do it when times that you're awake is all.
It's just gone dormant.
Yes, yeah.
And now it's cranked up again.
So do you think it is more so the fact that during the nights they are a lot more active during those hot days then? That's when they're kind of keeping a lot more, potentially more noisy and whatever else, a lot of the action's actually happening?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Point in case is first thing in the morning as we come to sunrise, right, we know it's cool. And just as that sun tips over that horizon, the temperature always drops 1 or 2 degrees, always. And the stags just light up.
Yeah,
they just go to town because of that temperature.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And then as that, and they all keep each other going. Like if you're in a high density area, all those stags will keep each other going. If I'm hunting in an area where there's not a lot of stags, guess what I do as that sun creeps over?
You start to try to get them going.
I just start calling. I
Yeah.
just start stag, like roaring. Yeah.
And you'll just keep going until they start responding?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if I've got a crew of blokes with me,
You
I
get
go,
them
"Hey,
to
mate,
go."
you go over there, you call that way, you go over there, you call that way, and I'll call this way."
Yeah.
As soon as that sun comes up.
So I had a theory going into last year, and I think I even sent it to you, and you said, "That's a stupid theory, don't do it," because red deer are not like elk. My thought was get one main guy doing the stag calls, get the others doing the hind calls. Like to me, that made sense because it was like one stag with many girls around him, and you're like, no, don't try it.
Yeah.
Too many hind calls, is that a bad thing in general?
It is. It is. They just don't call that much. They really don't.
Yeah.
And B, the more you call, the more a stag's going to be able to pinpoint your area. And if he can't see a hind, he's going to piss off.
Yeah.
You've got all these decoy things now that just pop up. You can put them up, especially elk. I don't know about
Red deer as
the
such.
red deer
Yeah,
as
I don't think
such.
I've seen them.
But I don't think it would really matter as long as it resembled a
Definitely.
red hind. But that'd be pretty cool to use. They're like umbrellas.
Yeah, essentially you
Pop
can
them
even
up.
pop them around your actual bow, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's some dude that's doing that. But yeah, if they can actually get a visual, if you can call and they can get a visual, that's cool. But not me, mate. I'm dead still with my buff up and just my eyes, and I've got something breaking my outline.
Definitely.
And I've seen it time and time again that too much calling can be really bad. But it also depends on the mood of the stag as well. If he's in full rut, hey,
He'll come.
call away.
Yeah.
He's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
He knows what he wants.
Yeah.
But it's just the stag raw. That's
Hold up.
important.
If he's in full rut, he won't go anywhere. He won't come to the hind call at all.
No. He won't piss off.
Oh, yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
If he's in full rut, if he's already
come
got a
straight to
girl,
you.
yep. Depends on whether he wants to leave the girls or whether he is the herd stag or he's a satellite stag too.
It's pretty interesting. I had a mong head once, and I think he just got injured during his growth, essentially. But he was roaring like crazy, hind called him and came straight to me. And then he got a bit flustered by me. I think, I can't remember, it wasn't wind, but I think he kind of came up on me and I wasn't in a good position. He stormed off and I just started calling to him again. He completely stopped on the side of the hill and he just laid down and he just sat there roaring at me nonstop. So I did a big loop around him and got on top of the hill. I'm like, I'll see if it works. And I gave one hind call and he sprinted right at me.
Yeah.
And so I think that must have been the same situation where he was like essentially ready to rumble and there's a girl calling. He's like, okay, here I come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been using fawn calls at all?
Not really. And that's more of like a almost like a meow, isn't it? Like a meow, meow, meow.
Yeah, it's more a high pitch and it's just like a me. That's it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So I think I was thinking more of like a fawn under distress then, potentially.
Yeah, no. You can do that but that would be to call in a hind.
Mm-hmm.
A fawn under distress, like a lead hind will run straight at you if they think
gotcha.
there's a fawn that's in trouble, like a dingo's got hold of it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's got its leg stuck or something. I don't know what scenario it'd be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just throw in fawn calls when I hind calls so that the stag knows that hind has been joined last season. She's got a fawn. She's sexually mature.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and round her up and bring her back here with these girls. Or, worst case scenario, he grabs his girls and pushes them over to that.
Which
to
isn't
that
great because
position.
you've got many eyes then on you.
Oh, it's a pain in the ass.
Does that happen often? Like, has that
The
been
bigger, older stags, they like to do that.
Yeah.
If you get them in the right mood, they'll just throw caution to the wind. If there's not many other stags roaring around them, that's something you've got to be careful of.
Mm-hmm.
You get a bigger, older fella and there's not many satellite stags, he won't mind leaving his girls. He'll come over and have a look.
Yeah.
But if there's pain in the ass, little stags running
all over the
around his
place.
girls that are trying to get their little bit of action,
Yeah.
he won't leave them.
And so, in regards to finding the big boys, what's kind of the theory for you? Like, I think over the last few years, I've tried many different approaches, and the thing that seems like you've said multiple times is the roaring gets the big boys talking.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, there's not obviously, but I've done it before where I've done a lot of roars and it shuts them up.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I actually found is that they came in closer to me.
Yep.
They've come for an inspection. I don't know. I think that was probably just a satellite coming for a look.
Yep.
But what's your theory? What's your method? Is there a system that you kind of try to stick to when it comes to the roaring and the calling?
Yeah, look, if we all had the perfect recipe for finding the big boys, we'd all have monsters on the wall, right? But what I've experienced in my time is I will start, like, even at camp, like I like to camp in amongst the critters.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, what about the smoke and all the rest of it? Don't worry about that. I've had stags start to roar when we've been cutting firewood with two stills in camp. They just start firing off because it's something different.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is start calling, and especially even at night when it's cooler and you're pretty sure you're gonna get an answer. You'll use a roar, and you don't use a dominant stag roar. You don't go deep.
Okay.
Because as much as the girls like that, we're not hunting girls. No, you want the big boy.
Yeah, okay.
So you want to sound like a less dominant animal. You want to sound not so deep, not so rough. Like I can get out there and sound like a big, raspy old stag if I want to, but it's not going to get me the results I want. It's going to make them shut down, right? So you sound like a younger stag and call through the night, and you listen. And you listen for the deepest, the heaviest, and the less often roar. He's not out there to advertise. He's probably got 20, 30 girls.
That's where he is. Yep.
It's just, he'll just say, hey, I'm over here, stay away.
So once they've found their space, how big of an area will they tend to cover. Like we went to a block, for instance. There's a block that I gained access to through some mates. And actually, interesting to what you said about the stills. Like one of my mates set up camp with his whole family there. Probably about 5 p.m. that afternoon. By 8 p.m. there was a stag 20 meters from camp just walking past him roaring. Just didn't care about them at all.
No.
But in this block, the owner, he comes up and he just uses a little phone call and just goes off. And essentially he knows where all of the stags are. He's like, oh, that's the 5x6. That's the little 4x4. Don't worry about him. That's just a spiker or a little satellite. Don't worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows exactly where they are. Essentially, like that's his location. So how big is a location that they will hang?
They will hold their rutting stand, as they call it, and it will only be a couple of 100 square metres. While he's got his girls, that's
all he needs.
That's all he needs, right? And it'll be in an area where he can see any oncomers, anything that poses a threat. Let's not forget about lead hinds, because they're 100 times smarter than any stag.
So what's a lead hind to be specific?
The oldest hind with the most experience in the herd.
Yep.
Yeah, she's the most dangerous thing. Like
because she's so alert.
If there's one thing that I could shoot to make my life easier would be every lead hind and every herd that I'll get hold of. But they're the ones that'll like they might see a little bit of movement and they will look at you, they'll stare at you. And then when they don't see it again, they'll look away. And as soon as they look away, and that's when you and I go, oh, I can move now. And as soon as you move or blink or anything, she'll be straight back on and she's looked away to make you do something. Like they're switched on. They're really switched on. And they usually got a grey crown on them.
They're usually a bit grey, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that they are the ones that tend to stick around? Like, it seems like it's almost, sometimes you'll see some of the big boys with just a solo hind. And maybe there's other girls around and I just haven't seen them. But in particular, there's one big boy I was thinking of, very thick. And he had this one chick with him. Would that be a lead hind? Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he only had one, though, probably just the hind that's in season.
Yeah, okay.
Or the one that's going to come into season, and he would keep checking her with his
lip.
Jacob's gland. I'm sure they call it a Jacob's gland, which is a weird name, but anyway.
Must have been the horniest guy around at the time. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Damn Jacob's gland. So space, they've got a certain amount of space. You locate based on the ones that are calling the least, is not necessarily the least, but the ones that aren't calling that much and that they have a deep, raspy call.
Yeah.
Once you've essentially somewhat located where you think they're going to be, what's your then approach? Like, how do you try to, if you've located them, are you still going to roar when you're approaching?
If I determine where I think a good stag is, I'll just leave the roaring alone. Until I get a little bit closer. Like, I try and work out where they are during the night or first thing in the morning, and then I'll leave the roaring because, it's the rut. They're either going to fight or they're going to fuck, right? And I know what they'd rather do.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want to fight.
Yeah.
They'd rather avoid that because that can end up with
Ruining
them losing their girls or worse than dying or getting injured. So, I listen to them, determine where they are. I will make my way with whoever's with me or by myself around to them. And when I get to where I think close vicinity is, I'll let out a really, like a piss poor excuse for a stag roar. And usually a dominant stag will just let out a God Almighty roar to say,
just
hey,
get out.
Piss off.
Yeah.
You're not welcome. That'll just tell me where I am, where he is, and then I don't roar again.
Yeah.
I work in from there.
How close would you try to be before you do that? Like, roughly, obviously, when you're laying in camp, you can't necessarily pinpoint directly where it is, but you can say, hey, I think he's up on that ridge.
Yeah.
Or I think he's in that bowl. So you're going to try to get just close to said ridge or bowl.
Half a kilometre.
Yeah. Give a little pissy thing. Yeah.
Yeah. He'll already have satellite stags milling around. Mm-hmm. And if they're roaring, he'll already be answering them. So perfect world, he's already making noise, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But the younger stags, you'll hear them. They're different. They sound different. And I didn't really understand that these muscles in the side of their larynx, the older they get, the further down to their breastplate they go, and it gives them a deeper, more attractive sound to the hinds.
So interesting.
Nature's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
But yeah, once you've got him and you know, like within half a kilometre, you know where he is, just shut the hell up. No more roaring.
Yeah. And then your approach is essentially spot and stalk from there.
Spot and stalk, 80%. If I get into a position or get somebody into a position where I think, hey, this fellow will come to a hind call, put them in position and get to a different spot and try and hind call him in.
Yeah.
But you just don't go stupid. You don't go
crazy.
full semi-automatic. You let out a hind call.
One every half hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let out a hind call and see what his reaction is. If he's really interested, he'll spin on a dime and he'll come in.
Yeah.
If he's over the top interested, it all depends on what else is happening as well.
So if you're by yourself, is the exact same approach? You would hind call and then sit back and try?
Unfortunately, most of the deer that I shoot are front-on shots.
Yeah.
A lot of blokes don't like those shots. Guys like myself and a few other blokes that I know, we've gotten used to making those very lethal shots. Don't recommend it for a beginner.
Yeah.
It's a very small window as compared to
big broadside shot.
A broadside shot that's as big as a basketball, your kill zone.
Definitely.
You've got a very small kill zone and a front-on shot.
I think it really comes down to definitely not within your first few years. You shouldn't take a shot like that because the adrenaline dump that's going to be happening to you during that time is not going to be worthwhile.
It's difficult.
It is. Yeah. I think as you become confident with that shot, though, I almost think it's one of the most lethal shots you can take, right?
Oh, yeah, they don't go far.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. You put an arrow through that carotid artery.
Down quickly.
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is absolutely lethal, but you've got a size of a cricket ball to shoot into as compared to a basketball on a broadside shot.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Definitely.
Even the how steep the country is, you know,
it's
like
you change it.
Very, very lot of variables. But you know, there's guys that are absolute artists at it.
Yes.
And you just know straight away that it's on. But yeah, I've seen stags run off with, because their neck bones are heavy, right? I've seen stags run off with arrows stuck out of their neck, and it's not nice.
No, that's unpleasant. It's not what anyone wants, right?
No, nobody wants that. That's a nightmare. Yeah. But that's what happens.
Exactly.
And that's where patience comes into it. But also having confidence in your gear and confidence in your ability.
100%.
Bow hunting is 80% confidence.
Oh, I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I saw a massive transition within my own abilities as I gained more confidence for myself. Yeah. And my hunting transitioned like so quickly as that confidence grew as well.
Yeah.
It all just started coming together a lot more, but because I had the confidence in my gear and I run the same setup I've been running for the last few years, the only thing I'm thinking of changing for the rut is going to the Zots rather than the pilot cuts. I'm going to see some as hopefully next week to do that. I've got some right here, but my freaking target. I need to get a new target because I've got a broadhead stuck in my target.
Ooh.
So whenever I try to tune in something, I always get a little chip in my brand new broadhead. So yeah, I'm going to go to Summer's place and use his instead.
Yeah, I've actually changed to the Zots. And look, the Cayuga boys are working on some pretty special prototypes at the moment. That in good time, once they're confident that they're going to work well, but these things are pretty bloody special. There's something I'm going to change to them once they've got them right. They're awesome. But I've changed to the Zots. You might have seen recently I shot a scrub bull up in North Queensland, massive animal. I had a Zot go through 2 ribs on a probably 900 kilo animal.
It's crazy.
They're just accurate. They're like shooting field tips. They're just crazy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I pulled the arrow, like it held on by the fletchers on the offside. It wasn't a complete pass-through. It was a 30-yard shot on a big animal.
Which is pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
To still get all
and it's only
73
pound in the bow. But I pulled that arrow out and hit it on the on the steel, and it's still
Good to
shaving
go.
sharp.
Yeah. Absolutely insane.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. I like the simplicity of it compared to the pilot cut.
Yeah.
In the fact that it just has less angles. That's
Yep.
all I mean by the simplicity of it, because sharpening one of those, once you've shot it through something, it can be as easy as just running those few different angles over a steel.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do need to get the file out and do all of that extra rigmarole, it becomes a bit of an extra job.
Yeah.
And so that's all I'm thinking about, is that when I get out for the rut, I really want it to be rut and rut only, not
Yeah.
having to play with gear while I'm there.
Yeah.
And essentially
Yeah.
I'll take enough arrows to make sure that's not a problem. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's the cool thing about the Zot too. You pull them out of the packet,
and they're good to go.
they're deadly
sharp. Yeah.
straight away. It's crazy, and the pilot cuts are the same as
Oh,
well.
definitely.
But confidence in your gear, like you were saying, making sure that your bow is in tune.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were saying that you've had some.
I've had some issues recently.
Yeah. And cool thing is for Queenslanders now is that Summers is up here in Queensland, and
Very excited.
Summers
for that.
Archery Solutions is up and running. Even though you are, I'd say, little Evie's settled in very, very well. He's open for business, and I think that Queenslanders are going to get a lot out of that, especially guys that are based in Brisbane, and his one-on-one training and all the rest of it. Not to take anything away from anybody else, but I
definitely.
still believe that he's the grand poobah.
Always been the top of the game, right, within Australia. So
Yeah.
it's you're going to learn a lot from. I think you're going to learn a lot from anyone you can get the information from.
Yeah.
But someone like Summers that has the background that he does, it just makes a lot of sense. I'm really excited. I've told him as soon as I found out he's moving up, I said, mate, book me in. Let me come on. And he said, just let me get set up and I'll get going.
Well, it's a cool part about having him as part of my hunting camp is that when we aren't out hunting, he's there teaching us, like he's instructing us as to what we could be doing
better.
wrong,
Yeah.
or what we could do better. And he is just a great teacher. He's just got this way about him that's so gentle and forthcoming with information, and you just absorb it because
Definitely.
of
It's
the way
not a
he
way
delivers
where
it.
it beats you down or makes you feel like a lesser person. He's
Yeah.
essentially just helping you to be better, and you understand that.
It's more encouraging than anything. It's not, hey, do it this way or else. It's just, you try this, try that, see what works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyway, he's up here in Queensland, and him and I will get up to a bit of mischief while he's up here before he moves on. But
Bit of a lesser drive for him this year.
yes, yeah. But he's keen as mustard too. He's just got little Evie there that's only a
it's
couple
incredible.
of weeks old.
Yeah.
He's smitten. I saw him a couple of days ago, and he's absolutely smitten. So
Yeah.
it's good to see.
Messaging with him today, he seems pretty stoked on life, as you are, right? When you when you have your first little, is he his first kid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
First little kid. It's amazing.
yeah. Crazy.
That will change a man. Change a
Yes.
man for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty much the difference I'm going to roll with this year coming into the rut. I think I just need to get my bow retuned, and that will make me confident again. It'll make me want to shoot again a lot more.
Yeah.
But changing to the Zots is something that I'm pretty certain I'm going to go with. A lot of my hunting, not necessarily, but a lot of my hunting previously has been solo hunting compared to hunting in packs as such. And a lot of the calls I've always done is brought in somewhat mature stags, but mostly the younger boys. Which makes me think that and it seemed like they came from almost ridges away to get to me at times. I don't know if it was the fact that I was calling a different boy, or if that was just a satellite stag that was taking advantage of the close by girl. But pretty much, you want to have view of the big boy before you even try to do anything towards him.
Sometimes you don't have a choice, mate. Sometimes a big boy will be in a big open paddock, and he's in the only patch of scrub that's on that paddock. He'll come out in the open at night because he's smart, right? And then during the day, he's just in the fringe of that scrub. But you need to get him out because you can't. You go in there, you got two chances, none and fuck all. You know, he's not going to play that game. So you got to get him to come out, even just to get a look at him to know that he's a stag that you want to spend time on. Sometimes early, if you get there early enough, or you work out his pattern, you get there early enough in the morning, you might catch him right on daybreak going back into that scrub. But you want to try and get him out of there. And you won't get to see him, but hind call, if he thinks he's left a hind and a fawn behind,
Might pull him back
you
out.
might get him back out. If there's no other young stags around, there's a high possibility that you'll get him back out. If there's other young stags about, he'll look at the harem that he's got and go, well, I've got, 15 girls here and there's one out there. No, she can stay out there. The boys can have her. It's a weird...
It is situation dependent.
It's flippant. They have flippant bloody animals, and as long as I've been hunting them, I still learn from them every year.
Definitely.
There's a stag last year that I'd been chasing for 3 years just to even get a look at him. And he roars in the same spot every year. And beautiful low-lying gully system, little creeks running through it, bit of scrub on top of the hills. Mate, he's like the Phantom, and I actually nicknamed him Ghosty. Got to lay eyes on him last year for the first time, and holy hell.
Big boy.
He's a big boy.
For a reason.
For a reason.
Yep.
He's super smart, and he's living under, he's only several hundred metres from the homestead. And they said they'd never seen him. And we got one of the crew within bow distance of him.
Wow.
I stayed right back calling, 150 metres back from where I positioned this guy, and at times he was only 10, 15 metres from this stag.
Yep.
But he held up tight in the wattle, in the little wattle scrub, and he didn't really stand still at all. He just ran around constantly, and there was an opportunity for a shot, and the shot was taken, and it clipped a branch on these things, and it went under his kill zone. Didn't hit him in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
but mate, he just the sound of that shot. I think he's still running. I'd never seen an animal like a bloody thoroughbred horse, mate, in the Melbourne Cup. How hard, mate? Geez, he pinned his ears back and took off, left his girls.
That was my next question is, what happens if you disturb them during the rut? Like, if they catch your wind, if you take a missed shot or you just make a misstep and they hear the sound around you and they run off, what is the likelihood of them coming back to that same station? They
will come back to that same station.
Okay.
Yeah, the bigger, older, smarter fellas, they might take a little longer. I've seen a rifle hunter when I was guiding. He had a shot at the stag, had 2 shots at a stag, missed completely both times. And I said, mate, just pack it up. We'll go back. We'll check your scope.
Yeah.
All the rest of it. We went back the next morning. That stag is in the same spot.
Wow.
Exactly the same spot. I know it's a different species, but when in 2017, my fallow buck, I shot him in rain. I called him in heavy rain, 40-yard shot. Probably shouldn't have taken the shot, but I was getting a bit frustrated. Front on, 40-yard shot, arrow went straight through his brisket, right? Just covered in fat and a little bit of blood. He ran off. Wasn't even a blood trail. As soon as I found the arrow, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah.
Went back the next day with Summers, and there he was in the same thing, laying down, happy as Larry, croaking away. It takes a lot.
Probably was a lesser scratch than what he would have got from some of the other boys in the rut, right?
Yeah, it was completely. It was just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
But he was laying in his scrape. And still, I crept down to within, I think it was 15 yards from him, and I got Summers to give him a
little attention
a little pew.
Yeah.
And he stood up, and the rest is history. But he was still keen to go, and in the same spot.
How often do the Reds tend to bed down during the rut?
A lot.
The boys, yeah.
A lot, especially when it's hot. This is one thing that I recommend to people is if you cannot call him and he won't budge from his girls, just sit back and wait.
Wait for him to bed.
Keep an eye on him and wait for him to bed. And especially the season that we're coming into now is going to be long grass, right? Exactly. So their eyesight is going to be absolutely
stellar.
Yeah, it's... Yeah,
like it's nightmarish the amount of grass that my block has right now.
Yeah.
Specifically where the deer hang out a lot, it is so tall and so bushy in that space right now.
Yeah,
because it's scrub paddock. They purposefully build it right up, and then when they when they very last need it, they'll send all the cows in there.
Yeah.
That's kind of their approach that they use. And so the deer absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit of a nightmare for that sense, but at the same time, obviously, if they're bedding down, it's still going to be within that same location anyway, right?
Yeah.
Is it that the boys will bed and the girls will run around, or it's pretty much once one beds, they all bed?
The girls will bed the same time as what he does, or they'll bed first, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember, he's doing a lot of, like, the girls will mill around and stand around and browse and do their thing and look after their young. And the boys are running around a lot, defending these girls.
Make sure they're there, yeah.
And as soon as they're happy that they've defended them, what do? They lay down. They conserve energy.
Yeah, okay.
Because they don't really eat during the rut.
The rut at all, yeah.
No, they build up right now they're building up their fat stores and just laying down the platform for 4 weeks of not eating. And that's why when you shoot a stag now, like we did the other weekend, it's got 2 inches of fat over its arse end.
Yeah.
That disappears over a couple of weeks really quickly, and they fall away and they get really gaunt in condition, especially when they're fighting all the time. The only place they got any meat on them is on their neck. But they will lay down as soon as they get a chance, and that's why you'll see a lot of stags will roar while they're laying down.
That's so interesting. So you said before that they'll like to find a space, especially the old boys, they'll like to find a space where they can gaze over a certain amount of area.
Yep.
So we're talking about essentially ledges, any sort of
shelves halfway up a hill or 3/4 way up a hill.
Yep.
Yeah, ridges, spurs where they can see down both sides. Stags don't look up, or deer don't look up that well.
Yeah.
Right? They can't.
It's only if they're on the right angle that they can be looking in that direction, right? Like if they're on the hill and it's projecting them that way.
Yeah.
But they won't necessarily lay down and look up the hill.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
They'll look out in front of them and down below them very easily, but it's a big effort for them to actually look up. So they will bed high because they know that's nothing's going to come in above them, and they can see everything below them without effort.
And so if you're trying to get up before sunrise and you know that you need to get up a certain ridge, is there any precautions that you're going to take if you know that there's deer located on those ridges?
Oh, geez, wind.
Yeah.
Wind's the big
Always
thing.
the biggest thing. Yeah.
I don't even really worry about head torch light.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about that at all.
So you will turn your torch on and go for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Yeah. Put it on half
I've
strength.
been creeping around in the complete darkness for the last 4 years.
It's a recipe for injuries, mate.
Tripping, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The only thing that's good for is anything that's in between where you want to be and where you are. Not putting them up.
Yes, yeah.
But if you know where the animal is and he's a kilometre away, the first 750 metres you do with your head torch on, don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah. I've driven
almost right up to the point.
To a point where I go, if I push it from here, I might spook him, but get out of the car, walk 100 metres, throw the binos up, there he is right there, and he's still roaring and just living his life.
So do you recommend getting up and being up before sunrise?
Absolutely. Be in the thick of it before that sun comes up.
Yeah.
Because you'll get to hear just about every animal that is within earshot, and you can hear a stag up to a kilometre away easily on a nice crisp morning.
Definitely.
And just sit back and listen to them, and you'll be able to pick which one you want to go for, and then you just use your wind and go, yep, I'm going to go over and see him, and then move on to that one, and then move on to that one, and move on to that one. Or if there's one really awesome sounding stag, or you can see one that's in amongst, there's a heap of stags roaring between you and him, and you can see him, and you know how big he is, you know what you've got to do, you can hatch a plan. It's not always it's never easy, actually.
No, I always go in with the false sense of security. It's the rut and it's going to be easier, but it's definitely not. It knocks me in the face every single year.
Yeah. After the rut's good time to hunt.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. A bit more docile and
it's harder to find them, but they're busy eating because they're that bloody
bats running up
hungry and wanting to get their energy stores back. Their heads on the ground or up in trees, and you can sneak in on them pretty easily. But you got to do it pretty soon after the rut, so you still get that nice cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, that nice bell-shaped cape.
So, I mean, that's finding the big boys. I watched a video from New Zealand last year of a guy that gets into the mountains. He'll roar to locate, or if he locates them already, pretty much his method is to approach them directly, go hard and fast at them, whilst roaring at them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it works a treat for him.
Yeah, right.
They pretty much come into him on the string as he's going to them on the string. Essentially, I think it's just almost like a stag taking an attack on another stag to say, I'm coming in for your girls. Is that something you've ever heard of, seen, or anything like that?
No, and I've never tried it, but I'm sure as shit going to give it a go this year.
I can't remember the guy's name, but he literally showed it on the video.
Yeah, right. I've always been a very aggressive hunter. I get into position, I paint the scenario in my head, and I move quickly.
Yeah.
I don't mess around. I used to, and I try to teach everybody that comes into my camp or anybody that hunts with me that deer don't have superpowers. They don't.
No.
Yeah, they've got great eyesight and they've got great ears. Your biggest enemy is their nose. If your wind's right, go at them.
Yeah, definitely.
Go at them. Get something between you and them. Make your
Especially
movements.
if you've got a good breeze, right? Like
Yeah.
you can get a lot of ground covered with a lot of heavy steps without them ever knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And cover your ground quickly because these animals move quickly. Even just milling around and browsing and doing their stuff, they can move 30 metres within 5 seconds. And that's just walking. Like, then you're trying to make up for it. And that's when you get into trouble, right? When you have to try and change the scenario that you've picked out in your head.
Yeah.
But there comes times where you have to move slowly as well.
Definitely.
A bedded critter, you move slowly.
Yeah. Because all they're doing is looking out to be alert, right? If they're not sleeping, they're looking for trouble.
Yep. Scenario like two stags fighting, which you'll very rarely see. I've probably only seen half a dozen times in 30 plus years.
Yeah.
You run at them. Just run in there and get in position and shoot one. Yeah, that's they don't give a shit what is going on.
I've seen stags in like May, June, knocking antlers. Looks like a lot of fun and playfulness.
Sparring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But have never seen it or even heard it, I don't think, heard like the big clanging or banging or anything like that.
It's full on. You'll know it. You're like,
I can imagine.
I've heard it a lot with fallow. Reds,
the big knocks.
very rarely, but you do hear it, and it ends normally pretty quickly with reds.
Okay.
Fallow go and go and go.
Yeah.
They play for keeps, those buggers. But the reds, they sort of don't last that long. 1 or 2 minutes is it. So you don't waste any time. If it's near you, just
go.
Just drop your shit and go.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, make the ground. And even after they're finished, they're that buggered from the fight, they're not taking notice of what's happening around them.
No.
It's a good opportunity to capitalise on an animal that's not looking or aware of their surroundings.
Definitely. So not last year, but the year before, I missed an opportunity where a stag, I had spooked the cattle. The cattle ran down into his valley. He was roaring at the bottom of the valley as they're coming down to him. And he eventually came up the hill. I had no idea. I just thought it was I actually thought he was a cow, to be honest. Yeah. He's come straight up the hill. His tongue was out his mouth. He was he looked distressed. He was just obviously pretty tired. It was 3 or maybe probably about 5 p.m. in the afternoon, but a hot day.
Yeah.
Just walking, looked straight at me, tongue out his mouth, just swaying side to side. Didn't actually take any picture of me at all. Like, didn't know what I was, didn't even care for me. Walked 10 metres past me.
But you're wearing tusk, though, right?
I was. Yeah, good stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the best. It is the best.
But he walked straight past me. I didn't draw back because I didn't know that I could. But I literally think, looking back on that moment, I should have drawn back and taken my shot.
Good stag?
Is my straight boy. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the one that I would like to target this year just because of our history over the last few years. Yeah. And when I said, depending on what you say today, the block that I have access to, I'm incredibly lucky with the genetics that we have, and I know that there's been some really big boys produced there. So I'd like to try and get a representable stag.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's a stag that I've had a history with and that I've got a little relationship going with. To the extent where I actually saw him, my very first rut that I ever had, And he walked straight onto me. So it's the second time he's walked straight onto me. I freaking haven't used it. So maybe third time lucky, eh?
It's very easy to get obsessed with particular stags.
Definitely.
Ghosty's one of those for me. Oh, geez, I was pissed off last year when that shot didn't come off. I laid down in the grass and screamed. It took forever. And to watch it all unfold from 100 yards away was pretty incredible.
I can imagine.
He was a beautiful animal. And for the guy that was shooting, it was even more frustrating for him. He was, it was a pretty, what would you say, emotional moment for him, because it was so full on, like have this massive stag running 10, 15 yards around you, and you can't get a shot at him. When you finally get a shot at him, your arrow clips a bloody twig.
I've done that before. I know exactly how it feels.
Yeah,
that
I've
was
done
on
it.
a small deer. So, yeah, I can imagine on a beast.
Yeah, I've absolutely done it on a beast as well, that my brother went and shot with a rifle a week later. But, you get obsessed with them, especially when you have close encounters with them on multiple occasions. It doesn't sit right in our brain, and they become, they may not be the biggest head, or they may not be the best looking head. Like yours is a straight V head, is what we call those narrow buggers, and then you've got your U shape and then your heart shaped ones. But he's still a trophy because of your relationship that you've built with him, and how many close encounters you've had. And I can guarantee you that when you do, if and when you do get the job done, it is going to be a bittersweet moment. You're going to be very melancholy about it because of your history with
History,
him.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In regards to taking cull stags during the rut, is that something that you're a fan of, or?
Oh, mate, I love it. I love it. I'm not the be all and end all of judging a stag on the hoof. I just look for their sexual characteristics, try and judge how old they are, what headgear they've got, the season that we're in. So I've got to take that into consideration.
Yep.
The better the season, like people say, oh, they're browsers, they're always going to do well. No, they're not always going to do well. They're like any other mammal. Like you starve any mammal from all the best nutrients, they're not going to be their best, right?
Yeah.
And if I think that it's an animal that is not worthy of being, if there's a
herd breeder,
if there's a young stag the same age as another stag, and one's got tops on it and nice, beautiful, classic lower tines and all the rest of it, and then you've got a double three that's the same age, and I get an opportunity at double three, I'll stick an arrow in his heart.
So let's talk about characteristics of aging then. Because I would see those two deer and not know that the double three is the same age as the other guy.
Yeah.
So how can you, like, with your best description, without them being right in front of us or without seeing multiple different animals, how do you age different deer on the hoof?
Okay. It's tricky on the hoof.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So a lot of guys say weight of antlers, which is a good thing, but I've seen old stags with thin antlers.
Okay.
They're just going backwards.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of old stags get thicker antlers as they're going backwards. But a big telltale is the shape of their body. So the older the stag, they get more shoulders, smaller ass.
Got you. So the wider fronts.
They're all chest, all neck, and they'll carry their head low when they're walking. Younger stags walk around cocky with their proud.
Yeah.
The other one is coloration and woolliness on their head. The pedicles, so the bone part that grows off their skull that holds their antler. Yeah. On a younger stag, they're long. As they get older, they get shorter. And an old stag, he'll look like his antlers are sitting right on top of his skull. Okay. And it'd be flat out having an inch of pedicle on them.
What age do they get to when that starts to happen? Like that's
you're
5 plus or older?
Yeah, you're looking 7, 8 when they're starting to hit their prime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I heard that brow tines will drop and flatten out more with age. Is that a thing?
I don't know. I've got 2 stags on the wall, and both of them are in their prime. I'd say 9, 10 years old, and both of them have got beautifully shaped brow tines.
Okay, so maybe it is just more a genetic thing.
It could be. What does tend to happen is that as they get older and past their prime, that those tines will shorten and become stubby. They will drop tines, like tray tines become either lower or higher. They'll look like tops or like a second bay tine.
Yeah, well.
The tops, stags will, as they go backwards, they seem to grow tops, but nothing else down here. I've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's weird.
Yeah.
They do all sorts of weird stuff, but definitely as they get really old, they get the short, stubby tines on them. They just don't develop.
Yeah, okay. Jawline, I think it was Clark McGee that told me this about the jawline. It either goes further out or further back as they get older. Do you know what that characteristic is?
So along the jawline, the teeth, or you're talking
No,
actual
I'm actually
jaw?
talking about the actual jaw. It will drop forward or back depending on the age. Like I think as the animal gets older, like a human would, essentially the jaw will become more developed and more drop further forward.
Yeah, right.
In a sense.
No, I didn't know that one.
I haven't seen. Yeah, so that's the hard thing because I can't actually remember the statistic. But there's something around that he mentioned.
So it gets like an overshot jaw on the bottom,
Exactly right.
or
Yep.
backwards.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't remember. I think it potentially even protrudes and comes back as the animal ages.
Yeah, right.
So as is in its prime, it's in a pretty primal position. You think about like a strong jawline.
Yeah.
Versus as it starts to age again, it protrudes back.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not definite though, so don't quote me fully on that. It was something around that though.
Well, if any man's going to know, it'd be Clark McGee,
Clark,
mate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Still got to get him on. It'll happen one day.
Yeah, right. Oh, you haven't had him on?
I haven't. No, we spent many times in camp together, and we just never got it to happen because every time I was there was so many other people there as well, and he's essentially running a place where he has to cater for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And so sitting down to do a podcast in the middle of the night wasn't necessarily going to cater for everyone. Exactly. And I understood that 100%. He's running an operation there, and I respect that. So it was just the unfortunateness of me not getting there either early enough or staying late enough after a hunt on a weekend. But it'll happen one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got a funny story that I need to ask you about afterwards. Actually, it's not good for the podcast, but okay. So you see a young cull. Let's base it just on the fact he doesn't have his tray tines, or his tray tines are too high, too low.
Oh, it's usually they're bay tines.
Tines.
But sometimes
So,
trays. Yep.
Brow bay being second.
Yep. Brow straight
Brow
over
straight
the
out.
eye.
Yep.
Bay.
Second.
Tray, as
Tray's
in
up high.
tree,
Yep.
third.
Yep.
Yeah. And then tops.
Yeah.
So you got your royal, your outer off royal, and your sir royal.
So it's usually going to be the bay tine that is not there or that's moving up or down.
Yeah, it's usually bay tine or tray tine. Yeah,
Okay, yep.
It's those two.
Yeah.
Brows are pretty prolific in all critters, but I've absolutely seen old stags without brow tines. They've just got stumps there,
Yeah, okay.
and they're not broken. They just haven't developed.
Just haven't developed them.
Yeah.
So if you see a stag with the antlers actually completely malformed, for instance, they're facing the wrong direction, they're growing in a mong head essentially. Is that essentially a cull stag in your opinion, or is it because it's been injured on growth?
Look, it could be anything. For it to be a completely, usually a damaged or a malformed antler on one side, that'll be damaged, right?
Yes.
If it's both antlers, he's either inbred or his genetics, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
He's a mong.
He's got to go. Yeah.
Right? In the top of velvet, and this is something Clark McGee taught me when I was working with him on his farm. In velvet stage with a stag, if they damage in the early stages, they cut the top of it. There's like a microchip in the top of it. It tells it how to grow, right? If they damage that getting through a fence or running through thick bush and a stick stabs in it, that antler's going to do some crazy
Maneuver
shit.
around, yes.
Yeah, it's going to do some pretty weird stuff. Even seen stags that get a big congealed
Almost like a
malformed
something.
ball on their antler from it getting damaged during velvet, and then it calciates. and then it becomes like this ball on the end of an antler. It's crazy.
And that would be due to injury, not due to
injury.
genetics.
That's correct.
Yeah.
A lot of guys think they've shot a malformed head or a genetically inferior head where a stag has, and there was a lot of these last year, right? A stag's had a fight, it might have been the year before. They've had a fight and they've damaged their pedicle on one side. And they'll have a beautiful 5 or a 6 on one side, and the other side's like, it's just
flimsy
nothing.
Or pointing back.
It's just, Summer shot one in 2020 in our camp. Big 4 on one side, about 35 inches long, and the other side looked like an antler, a sperm-shaped antler, like a spike that long.
Yeah.
It was crazy, but it was from a damaged pedicle. It wasn't anything to do with genetics, even though he was a 5 or 6 year old stag, and he should have been better than a 4 on one side. Beautiful, beautiful country he came out of. He was damaged on that one side and couldn't grow an antler.
So you're actually better off to tell genetics not based on if you see a mong head like what I previously have called a mong head, it would have been something like that. One antler just malformed because of what Clark actually told me the same thing about the injury side of things.
Yeah.
What a mong head typically usually is actually one that doesn't have the 3 tines or has something funky going on. Like, for instance, one side is a long spike, and the other side is developed.
Yeah, that could be injury to me.
Okay.
Mong heads to me is both antlers are completely fucked up. Like you wouldn't imagine a deer head to grow like.
Yeah, okay.
Some guys will see an antler growing down beside the head. That's just a damaged pedicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not genetically inferior. They've just broken their antler
They had a
at
rough
the pedicle, at the skull with the pedicle. So the pedicle has still received the blood and the nutrients to grow the velvet, but because the pedicle's broken, it's growing down under their jaw.
Super interesting.
Yeah, you'll see stags that get injured. Like you'll see stags, they'll fight, and a stag winning a fight, he'll chase a stag and hit him fair up the arse with his antlers, right? If his antlers basically castrate the stag that he's hit up the arse, he'll never cast his antlers, that stag.
That's what they're trying to do, is it?
No. They're just trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, gotcha.
But if one of their tines go through his testicles and he loses all ability to produce his testosterone and his testes are gone, he'll never cast those antlers.
It's actually something that Clark had done up at Glenfiddich at one point. He up at the Ridge Group, what he had done essentially was they'd castrated one of the fawns that they'd got because he was a male, and they needed to raise him up, but they were worried that if he had too much testosterone, that he would start to cause havoc around the place. And he did, because he would just eat everyone's food. But outside of that, he was
They called him like a giant hind.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
They called him Happy for a reason.
Yeah, right.
He was a good little fella to have at camp.
There's been experiments done with stags where they've castrated them in velvet, and they just keep the velvet.
Wow, forever.
Yeah.
Like until
But it goes to shit. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In hard antler, they never cast. At that stage, they never grow antlers. They don't even grow pedicles. Yeah, so it's a lot to do with hormones, testosterone. Definitely. Yeah,
which humans are the same, right?
Yep.
There's even statistics or studies coming out now on because essentially when men ejaculate, it's part of like a process that we use to. It's almost like a toxin release, essentially, that we use. But when we get the snip as men, it can then stuff up that whole system and can create a lot of internal damage and can stuff up testosterone within men, which is pretty interesting. So seeing a lot of stuff happen from guys getting the snip, and 10 years later, they've got man boobs like never before, because not only because of their health and lifestyle, but because of the testosterone drops that happens from the snip. Pretty intense.
Well, I'm starting to feel like shit, mate, because I've had the snip.
Sorry, mate. It's reversible.
No, I got the irreversible one, mate.
There you go. You're actually
man boobs, here I come.
No, you're looking incredibly well. You've done well to get yourself back in track, back in shape. I'm sure if you if you keep up with the lifestyle you're doing at the moment, you'll stay well. But yeah, that's a recent study I came across because I've been trying to search into whether I should get the snip or not, and essentially I've decided not to because of that. Crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, full on. Sorry, mate. So if you're going on the rut, like what's your typical outlay for the rut? Obviously, you've got a camp with a fair few people in it. When's your hunting happen? What's your approach? Like, are you going just to get meat ever? Or is it a trophy hunt? Are you just focused on getting everyone else sorted first?
And you'll probably hear a few guys say the same thing, but I actually do this. I put everybody else in front of me. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty blessed that I've got some pretty magnificent stags on the wall.
Yeah.
And I don't need to shoot another. I'm quite happy to shoot culls and just collect meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I love eating venison. It's
Definitely.
just the way I am. But I love to see guys like Jacko last year take his first stag, which was pretty special.
Incredible, yeah.
There's and it was a super cool afternoon. We had several stags roaring around us, and there was a nice double six there, and this thing was just playing up, and he had one hind. This thing, it was basically a satellite stag that had got himself one hind, and it took us an hour to call him in, but we got him.
Yeah.
But I get more enjoyment out of that.
Definitely.
And I love being out there with the guys, and it's just my reset button for me and teaching people. We've got a young lady joining us in camp this year, Holly Boone.
Yeah.
You might have heard of her.
I don't think I have.
She's just new in the bow hunting scene.
That's awesome.
Pretty new, but yeah, she's joining us in camp this year. Got a few new properties to run around.
Yeah.
But yeah, by and large, mate, last year out of 20 hunts that I did during the rut, I carried my bow twice. So I just take the guys and do my thing with them.
Yeah.
The experiences that we have out there when I can just fully concentrate on helping them,
Definitely,
is they just take to their grave. It's great fun. The only time that I wish that I had a bow is when a cull stag runs in as a satellite stag while we're talking to a big fella, and he comes within bow range, and I'm like, ooh.
It's a lucky day, mate.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually very excited. My brother has shown a lot of interest in hunting in general recently. He's come from essentially almost being vegan, or being a somewhat vegan, situational vegan, he used to call himself, because he would eat meat when the situation arose, essentially. But he's completely done the 180. I've educated him on how good meat actually is for you and how horrible a vegan diet can be.
Yeah.
And he had to find a lot of the information himself. I had to guide him towards it and make it his idea. But he's actually come around to, dude, I want to come out and I want to start hunting with you. I want to get into it. He's more so down the route of, let's just make it easy and get a gun and make it happen. But on the other side of it, my brother-in-law has done the exact same thing. So I think potentially this year I've got a few family members joining me for, if not the rut, sometime around the rut, which I'm really excited to actually share what I've learned and taken on board for the last 4 years and actually be able to pass that on to completely brand newbies.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see how that kind of goes as a piece.
You'll get a lot of satisfaction out of that, mate.
I think
you
so.
really will.
Yeah.
As satisfying as it is to have a successful hunt, and let's face it, we're bow hunters, that's few and far between.
Yeah.
It's watching somebody else be successful, and this is why I take my responsibility to pass on information to help people be successful in their hunting, in the pursuit of hunting deer. Watching somebody else be successful, it's next level satisfaction,
really
right? Yep. And especially if you experience a few seasons with them, and
you see it all come together.
Yeah, you see it all come together, and you watch them try their guts out, and you drag them all over the country, and they still do it with a smile on their face, and you watch them get frustrated, and you watch them release carbon in the air at something, and it misses, and all the rest of it. When it actually all comes down and it all happens for them, it's special. But that's also a breaking moment for them too. It's
definitely
because once they get it done once, it's the monkey's off the back.
Exactly. I think I've witnessed that in twofold, because I often get people reach out to me and explain explaining the successes they've had because of the podcast, which is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it when that happens. But the other side, which I got to witness, was because I essentially documented my whole journey as a bow hunter when I was successful, and I was successful many times before I got to my stag, but that was like the pinnacle for me. That was the big arching goal that I was always aiming for. And when that actually happened, like the response from listeners, people on Instagram, whatever else, like it was overwhelming to see how happy everyone was for me. And it's funny because I get that same happiness for when someone reaches out and say, mate, thank you so much. I just achieved this. And they send through the pictures. And it might be a nanny goat that they've just taken, and it doesn't matter because it's a trophy to them. It's an amazing feat that they've just overcome. It's really quite inspiring to be on that side of it as well.
Gives you a sense of purpose
definitely.
as well. That you actually have the ability to influence people's journeys in a chosen passion that. There's not a lot of us around.
No, definitely.
Compared to like footballers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's sometimes it's a passion or sport of solidarity, and you do a lot of time by yourself. And when you actually get to share what you've learnt with other people,
it's exciting.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's great
I
fun.
think the other side of it is that I've witnessed it's literally been our provider of meat for the last year. Hunting has for me. It's been amazing.
How good.
And I'm trying to continue that moving forward. But
what do you think of venison fat?
I don't really have it that much, to be honest. I usually cut it off and leave it out.
Yeah, mate. You might as well eat a candle, right?
Exactly. It's pretty waxy. Yeah. Often, to be honest, I will actually, if there's little bits, I will mince it through.
Yep.
And you don't notice as much until you go to clean the pan the next day.
Yeah.
And you see the
it's good for making candles, mate. That's it.
Exactly. maybe preserving teeth. I don't know.
Yeah, it's horrible.
What I'm excited about is that is now potential for the outskirts of my family as well. So if my brother-in-law comes down, that's then going to feed his family for months on end.
Yep.
If my brother gets into it, it's going to then start to feed his family for months on end. I really love that side of it as well.
Yeah.
It's using it for the greater good of the family, essentially.
It's such a magical resource, right? That
it really
our
is.
Ignorant government still haven't tapped into. You look at how much government land is around.
It's ridiculous.
That has got just a squillion deer on it.
And they're taking more and more right now, right?
Yep.
Every bit of lease country is becoming non-accessible eventually.
Yep. And they would rather go and poison these critters than utilise it and use it for not only raising money in the government, which would be easy, right, but for the communities that surround these areas and increasing their businesses.
Definitely. Have you read the recent changes or what they're proposing? The changes to the bill?
No, it pisses me off too much, mate. It actually makes me angry, and I really don't have the capacity to and the patience or the want to let these pricks make me feel that way.
Definitely. Yeah, I got sent it recently. I haven't had a chance to actually read through it yet. It is on my, I do want to read through it just to see what they're even proposing and see what it does mean for us moving forward. But I don't think that us, how do I say this properly? Sometimes it feels like a lost effort even trying.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like almost like the mind is already made up, and I don't think that's the right approach. But just sometimes it feels like it's a wasted effort.
Yeah. You look at South Australia recently.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Their mind was made up. No matter how many people were against that decision that they made, they were going to make that decision.
Yeah.
Because of one person.
Exactly. And I mean, it hasn't completely gone through yet, and I mean, I've done a fair bit to try fight for that, and I will keep fighting for it. But at the same time, it does sometimes just feel like a bit of a lost cause, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's disheartening.
It is. That's probably the biggest part.
Yeah, because we aren't mainstream.
Yeah,
we do something that they don't want us to do.
Yep.
So they're going to do everything that they possibly can to control it.
Yep.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. For what purpose?
Yeah.
And I think there's it's the same thing down in Victoria. I think you can't share game meat at all.
Yeah.
It's just the control of if you shoot game, you have to eat it yourself. You can't share it around. Like you can't pass it off to your family. It's illegal.
Yeah.
It's it's absolutely bizarre to me. It's
Yeah.
just
It's
a controlling factor.
Yeah, they just want everybody to go into their supermarkets.
Exactly
and,
right. Yep.
Yeah, control the spending of people and
boost the economy in the cities, not worry about the small folk in the outer.
correctly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As we both sit here rubbing our eyes in frustration.
Yes.
It's
Yeah. My old man always said to me, and I'll always think the same, anything a politician wants for us isn't good for us. So,
yeah.
yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Actually, I've got another one for you. The guys that are making all the decisions now, right, the guys, they're around my age, right, around that 45, 50.
Yeah.
These are the guys that they weren't playing sport at school.
No.
These are the guys that we were giving wedgies to and locking them into their lockers, right?
Yeah.
and you can call it bullying or intimidation or whatever, but these are the guys that are making the decisions now, and they don't want anybody to feel like they ever did, and they're making all these decisions, and they've gone on a different path than some of us, and that now influences everybody that they are in control of as a politician.
Some of it is really such a joke, right? Like the level of political correctness that people have to follow, otherwise they get cancelled, is just ridiculous.
Yep.
I'm surprised as a community we haven't been cancelled yet, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You might want to cut some of this out, mate.
No, luckily it's only Bowhunters that listen. We're safe. It's a niche market.
Yes, very niche. Very like-minded people too.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of good people. Well, mate, I think that's a lot of really incredible insights, and I think like the amount that I just learned from you just now in this hour and a half conversation has been incredible, and it's going to change and transition the way that I approach my hunt this year for the rut. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome, mate.
Is there anything else that you think we should cover?
No, I think we've basically got to where we needed to be. Nature is so it's got so many variables, right? And all of what I've experienced, and because I love red deer so much and I've studied a shitload about them, whatever you're experiencing in the bush, don't take my word for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't take what you've read for it or what you've heard from everybody. Just go and check it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have a crack at it and learn from it. Because I get, like I said earlier on, I get surprised every bloody year.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the biggest, Queensland bushhead, the biggest one, it was a 7x8. And I nearly didn't go and look at him because he sounded like an immature stag. But he was an incredible stag.
Yep.
And I didn't get him. He's still running around out there somewhere. Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But if I didn't go and check it out, if I just believed what I believed, or what I had heard,
What you assumed. Yeah.
or what I assumed,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got to see that stag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
don't
have to make your own journey. You really do.
don't hold back.
Yeah.
You might be feeling knackered and it's late in the morning and it's hot, and you're on your way back to camp and you hear a stag roar. Don't just let him roar. Go and have a look. Go and have a crack. Just take your time.
The amount of times that someone has said something to me on the podcast and I've gone out, like it's a tip to not go and fuck up, essentially. I've gone out and done that exact thing in the bush and be like, well, now it's sunk in. It took a while, but it got there.
Yeah, and you'll be
so
surprised how many people will listen to what I just said then and say, oh, yeah, when they're in the rut and they're feeling knackered, they want to get back to camp and have a beer and cook some breakfast. And they'll hear a stag.
Yeah.
Just about guaranteed every morning on your walk out, you'll hear a stag.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 people will just keep walking towards camp. It's the one guy that turns around and goes and puts himself in position and gets up on that stag, and he ends up being a monster.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So don't let the thought of comfortability or what you've already got in your brain determine what you do on a day-to-day basis, or what I say or you or anybody else.
Definitely.
Make up your own mind, because it's all about adventure, right?
It really is.
And nothing ventured, there's nothing gained, right?
Yeah.
So go and get into it.
Like you said on the very first podcast that we did, is do the miles, get the smiles. Right?
Yeah, mate.
Every new ridge holds so much extra potential.
Absolutely.
Take that effort to walk up that hill, because you never know what it could unfold for you.
And check every bit that you can, because sure as shit, you may not hear a stag in there,
It could be that.
But you're looking there, and he's just there with a heap of girls just being quiet because that's what he wants to do, and he's learnt the hard way.
Yep.
And if he's vocal, he gets his ass kicked. Yeah.
So, mate, what's your Instagram again?
Kev_Schilf.
Yep.
Anybody wants a sample of a hind call or a fawn call, just DM me, and I get a lot of traffic on Instagram this time of year, but I try and help as many people as I can. So just reach out, guys, and if I can help you, I will.
Are you still doing the horns?
Mate, there's too many farmers that dehorn cattle at an early age.
Yeah,
it's really hard to get hold of.
Yep.
But what I'm in the middle of is developing one that is man-made that sounds the same.
So what are you using? Some sort of...
It's
or something, or?
Yeah, so I've been trying resin.
Resin, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And it's very good. It sounds good, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, okay.
And I want to try and make it as cheap as possible.
Definitely.
So I'm playing around with a few other materials.
Yeah, good.
So which will be extremely lightweight but sound good.
Yeah.
Anybody who's looking for something to call with and they don't want to spend a lot of money, but it gets the job done. And remember, you only want to sound like an immature stag, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Piece of 8 inches of polypipe, like
PVC
3-inch
pipe,
polypipe.
good to go,
Yep.
The other thing I heard was vacuum cleaner pipe.
Yep. Go and cut a section out of your wife's vacuum cleaner.
Don't tell her we said so.
If you've got the balls to do it,
Yeah.
just do it just before you leave to go to hunting camp. But yeah, there's mate. I called up a heap of stags with the end cut out of an orchard bottle when I first started, and I just wrapped insulation tape around the end of it until I got the sound that I wanted.
There you go. Yep.
Just made it thicker and heavier as I went.
Yep.
Until I got hold. Bullet corn to me is still the best.
Yeah, definitely.
They've got such a natural tone to them. But yeah, it's just keep in mind, don't be a big aggressive stag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Well, mate, thank you so much. Good luck to everyone in the rut. I really do hope the best for everyone who's getting out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Good luck. Send through your photos.
Yes, 100%.
Want to see 'em.
100%. That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you are enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.